So previously we've talked about the importance of keeping your computer clean, and last week we went over how to clean out your laptop in a very basic fashion. Today we're going to be going over how to clean out a desktop computer, even when it's in pretty rough shape. So let's take a look at what we're dealing with today. In here we can see the CPU fan is pretty darn gunked up there. Dust and grime underneath the video card. It looks like we got some dust. It looks like something splashed on the side there. The hard drive bays. On the bottom of the case we got a lot of dust built up. Cable management's pretty all over the place. All in all though, I mean, it's a nice motherboard. The Z97G5 is a pretty good one. Older model for sure. So it's a good looking computer all in all. It's got a lot of pretty decent components in there. We just gotta take some time to pull it all apart and get it all nice and clean. So let's get to work. So I always start by unplugging as much of the cables as possible. I want to be able to get to everything. I'm going to throw on some gloves here as I notice how thick a lot of this dust is. Take off the graphics card, get a look at that. Very dusty. Get the CPU fan off of there. Now here I'm deciding what to tackle first. Moving my cat's butt out of the way. Alright, you can already see a lot of the dust buildup there around where the CPU fan was. And I'm gonna go get some supplies real quick. Vacuum to get all of the bigger chunks out of there. Makes quick use of it. Alright, first things first, get our isopropyl alcohol ready. Grabbing some cotton swabs and some paper towel. And then just doing a quick wipe down of all of our surfaces to get as much as the contact dust off of there as possible. Now I'm going to pull out all of the wiring, get the power supply out of the way, and now more vacuuming, more dusting, just hitting all of those major spots first off. Isopropyl alcohol does a really good job as a cleaning agent as well as a stripping agent, so it'll pull a lot of that dust away that's like kind of embedded into it. Get that front panel out of there. That's where a lot of dust is going to be. That intake fan is going to be worse than anything else because it's going to be pulling in all of the dust from the air around it. Getting another wipe down. I'll be doing this over and over again with the wipes, and you can see it evaporates super quick too, which is why isopropyl alcohol is one of the best things to work with. Right. Get some of my Q-tips ready. Hit a couple of those spots that have been bugging me. Here's when I go to pull out that intake fan. Get that off there. And as you can see, it is just caked. And working my way through it. Collecting as much of the dust off there as possible. And I'm going to be going through so many different paper towels here just to get it all away. And you can already see it's all that dust and grime. I mean, this is computer's probably sitting on the floor for a couple of years. Alright. I think my video cut out for a second here, but I moved it along, cleaning out some of the motherboard itself now, which is a very delicate operation. I would not suggest to do that unless you were 100% confident you knew what you were doing. So I'm using the Q-tips to get in all those nooks and crannies, all the different heat sinks, and the heat spreaders there, off the mem chips. Get my duster out. But once I realize can of air isn't quite enough, that's when I break out the big boy, power duster. This one is intense. Very, very strong push. It actually blew away like all of my different Q-tips that I had set aside there. But this one's really good for getting underneath the motherboard without having to take it out fully. And I wipe away that thermal compound that was on the CPU and get that back into place. The mounting unit was annoying for me, but I got it back in there okay. And we work at the graphics card. This one was a doozy. We've been pulling in dust from the intake fan and then straight through to itself for quite a long time. So we pull that all apart, make sure to get those torque springs just right, and I counted the turns it took to get them off too. This is something I would not recommend unless you knew 100% what you were doing. That is a bare die on the GPU. But you can see all of the different dust that's caked away on the fans there. So I have a little cup there that's full of isopropyl alcohol. Getting as much as the old thermal compound off the die as possible, and I'm being very delicate there. Again, we don't want to do any damage to that, because that is where our processing happens. Now I'm working at the heat spreader, getting the old thermal compound off of there. And look at all the bits left over, all those thick dust components. And now rearranging my tension screws back onto the mount. I don't want to leave that exposed for too long. Blowing all the dust away that's left over. Quick little wipe, and now we work at the fan. Luckily, because we took it all apart, it's easy to do, just time consuming, making sure we're getting all of that dust out of there, making it nice and pretty again. Plugging in the fan, back into the power on the GPU board there, getting those screws. Now we're cleaning out the CPU fins itself. This one was a pain in the butt. Look how many times she's getting in between every single one of them. Again and again. Oh, that one took a long time. But it's well worth it, especially not only just for spreading the heat around, but getting all of that out of there. I mean, look, even after all that work, still lots and lots. And then just helping out dry in between the fins as much as possible. Already a significant difference there. We start mounting that fan back on. Getting it all nice and clean. And then, yeah, I'm using the Q-tips to do it. It's more delicate. These fans can break if you put too much pressure on them, so I use the Q-tips as a little more gentle. And then just the finishing drying off. Get that mounted back on there. Get that set out of the way. Now working at the power supply. Giving it a dust out from the inside. I think I ran out of air in my can, unfortunately. Now we're getting back into reassembly. So I've reapplied the thermal compound there, and now I'm going to remount the CPU cooler, get the GPU back into the system, and then get that hard drive back in. And that's when we're going to start rewiring everything. First thing I like to do is get everything plugged into where it should be. Oh man, the power switch, the reset switch, I always get so much difficulty with that one. And then we work towards our cable management. I thought it looked like such a mess before. I figured I would spend some extra time making sure that everything was as managed as possible. There weren't a lot of actual channels to go through with this system, so I made use of what I had, keeping everything along the bottoms and the walls as much as possible. Recheck that mounting. And we're going to get our SATAs plugged back in. And again. the main board, getting all those extras set aside. And then the CPU power, getting that one nice and wired in. The case is upside down, so everything is hanging, but I promise it looks better than cable management looks a lot better. That was an intensive cleaning. And that's what happens when you have a computer for 5 to 10 years that you've never cleaned once. You've never even looked on the inside of. That kind of buildup is actually pretty normal, unfortunately. That's why doing just a monthly wipe down of any buildups of dust or grime that you see with just a dry towel can ultimately save you from burning your entire computer. But now, after all of that's said and done, let's make sure it all turns on, alright? I'm Waylon. This is XethaPCs.